I think this video has to come with a forewarning about my content. Usually I only review horror media, and that being said, I might change the titles of my thumbnails to reflect that. Instead of it saying horror, it'll say like the subgenre of whatever it is that I'm reading instead. And this was the first book that made me feel like I needed to do that because I didn't sign up for a romance book. But like about halfway through, that's what I was getting. The book in question is The Resurrectionist by A. Ray Dunlap. And if you want to buy this book or any of the books reviewed on my channel, you can use my affiliate link in the description below. That helps this channel and independent bookstores. Hooray! I have a slight obsession with Victorian medicine, and hearing about this book was one of great interest to me. But maybe I should have known a little bit better when it came with a colon that says twisty gothic mystery of dark Scottish history. Maybe I should have read it a little bit clearer right then, because I don't know a lot of books that need a colon and then a long sentence of a descriptor for what said book is about to be about. I feel like I was convinced to at least read the book, assumed medical horror would be a great part of this. I wasn't wrong in this assumption. The Resurrectionist wasn't exactly the book I was looking forward to. Something that me and Loki were talking about the other day on my live stream was Penny Dreadful, which is a TV show about, Victorian body horror, basically, Frankenstein, vampires, things like that. This book had a big kinship with that. It was written and kind of reminds me of a Penny Dreadful. Maybe I haven't read enough Penny Dreadfuls for me to really understand the genre fully, because this book didn't hit the mark for me. This book is about James Willoughby, a sheltered young man that's just trying to become a surgeon in 1820. He's of the upper class, so he speaks like he's of the upper class. This was a time where body snatchers were quite rampant, especially for medical purposes. But James knows nothing about that because he's pretty sheltered. This book is narrated from his point of view, which could come off pedantic, but it's not overwritten. He's just he has a sophisticated, quote unquote, sophisticated way of speaking. It comes off as like pretentious a lot of the time, but it does have a tone of familiarity that makes it easier to read. So it's not all pretentious overflowering all the time. It's just kind of how he is as a person. The banter is charming and witty, and it just makes it easier to read, because I read this book pretty quickly. It was easy to read and understand because it wasn't overwritten. The plot, however, in the beginning, it was extremely, like I said, it was easy to read and understand what's going on. The pacing was well done. It's a good look into a man of the time who is trying to just get through school by less means than he's used to, and in fact less means than most people have in his social circle. Most of them have a little bit more money than he does, despite him being a man of apparently high means. His dad gambled away all their money, so when the dad passed away, he kind of was stuck with nothing, and that's something he wasn't really used to. Because he's trying to get into medical school, he doesn't want to go to the medical school in London. He thinks it's all just theory versus actually working on the sick or people who need surgery. So he goes to Edinburgh, Scotland. He's trying to get his education there because he hears that the private schools in Edinburgh tend to be better than the ones in London. His oldest brother gives him the okay and gives him like a tiny little allowance and pays for room and board. The description of anatomical dissections are really good in this book. I think that Dunlap did do her homework on what it was like to be in a medical theater at the time. Legally, they could only teach with cadavers of criminals that were executed by the state. Would it be the state in England? They were executed by the government. They don't really have a lot to work with because they weren't executing a lot of people all at once, all the time. A massive classroom of about 120 people was the norm for this kind of work. Students didn't really get hands-on experience unless they went to the private universities. And that's where our secondary character comes in. His name is Anirin, and he's the assistant to one of the teachers from the private universities. He's handsome and clever, but I swear to God, if this book says withering look one more time, I'm gonna freaking lose it. And this is this is where it gets hard to read, because I love Aniron so much. I think he's an interesting character, and I thought he was so, like, he had the potential to become a character that was very three-dimensional. Unfortunately, right in the middle, well, not even in the middle, like 1/3 of the way through, he just becomes like this love interest for James, and that's it. It just left me wanting more, and it didn't deliver, because from this point to about 90% of the book, to it just becomes about James and Aniron's romance. And I cannot state enough that I do love romance, and queer romances are so important to me, but I didn't come into this book expecting it at all. Maybe I need to screen these books a little bit better, because that just blindsided me completely. It was more of a romance and dark academia book than a horror book. I wanted to read about body snatchers, and then the twist that they mentioned in the title was romance. That was the twist. The twist of the book was it was a romance book and not really a mystery book. I was just not expecting it. I feel like that's why it ended up losing a star for me. And the other star that it lost for me was that the romance part just keeps dragging on. And I'm like, this is very typical of contemporary romance, which I read a lot of. It's like, it's a guilty pleasure of mine to read contemporary romance. But for me, I was like waiting for more of what you got in the beginning, which was, medical horror, body horror, talking about Victorian medicine, things like that. But it didn't hit the same way. It felt different. I just felt like the beginning of the book was extremely strong. It started out so interesting, but the ending it just fell completely flat for me. And here comes my small spoiler section, realizing that it might not be small, but here comes my potentially small spoiler section to let you guys know my feelings about some of the other things in this book. The timestamp is going to be right here, right there. And then, yeah, just skip this if you want. And then I'll kind of come back and talk about some of the other things at the after this spoiler section. Okay, spoiler time. So Burke and Hare were mentioned on the book jacket, and basically, I'm going to be so for real with you guys right now. The pair were barely in the book. Like, you don't even see them until about 3/4 of the way through. They're not even really a looming threat. They're mentioned offhandedly, like once. That's it. They're not even really a looming threat. They're just there at the end part. I would like to say that Edith, James's sister, tends to be more of a looming threat than Burke and Hare are, because Edith found James and Aniron sleeping together, and Aniron was afraid that she was going to send him to the gallows, because one, that's scary as fuck back then, but apparently being gay was super duper illegal, like to the point where it was like death penalty worthy. I would say that because of the point of view this book was written from, of course, whatever is directly affecting James is going to be the thing that is going to be the looming threat, not the thing that's threatening them all as a whole. Because James is pretty much all up in his own head all the time. He's always thinking about what's going on with him. So you really don't get a lot of what's going on with everybody else. And this whole thing is why I said that romance should have been the selling point, because it reads like a romance book. It's all about the main character, but, any kind of tiny little problems that are actually going on, they really don't affect him. the one of the bigger selling points, like one of the marketing points of this book, was that it is a mystery. The mystery is basically, when the hell are Burke and Hare going to show up, and what is their whole plot line in this whole thing? And it's really very small. They're thugs that killed their friend. That is the plot line. That is the mystery. And it doesn't feel like it was a mystery. That's kind of just what happened in history. Everyone knew that Burke and Hare were, Burke more than Hare was executed for body snatching. So what ends up happening is you get a little bit about them doing that. It's not more than like, they're thugs in the book. That is their description for me in this book. They're really nothing more than just boogeymen. They don't do much else. You don't get shit about them. You don't get to know about them. When I picked up this book, I thought it was about them, to be fair, but it's about James and Aniron. But once again, that just feels like that was on me. I should have read the description a little bit more often, because yeah. Another note on the jacket of the book says it's a whole race for prestige and power, and that's basically non-existent. The only person who cares about prestige the whole time is James, because it's written in his point of view. Once again, it is what he cares about. That's what he cares about, and that's what is going to be focused on, prestige, because he's from a rich family, which they repeat quite often. And I realize I am now repeating it quite often because of how often it was mentioned. I just felt like this book should have been written in a dual point of view. I felt like that would have helped a lot with the plot line, because a lot of the plot was with Aniron and we didn't get to see shit about it. I feel like Aniron would have made having a plot, having chapters written from Aniron's point of view would have been so much more interesting than just James, because Aniron does all of the cleaning and articulating of bodies. He preps the medical specimens. He's got information about like Victorian forensics, to the point where the police are asking him about information, and them at the end of the book giving him some sort of like apprenticeship with the forensic side of the police department in London, which feels like we should know more about, but we don't get to know about Aniron other than he's James's love interest that likes to give him a withering look sometimes. Actually, all the time. Whenever you see him, he's giving a withering look at James. It's a lot. It's very noticeable, and it's very often that they repeat that line. Yeah, and that's kind of like the indication for me where it was like romance, because they like to repeat shit all the time in romance. Another romance trope that was mentioned. It was only mentioned once, but it stuck out so far to me that I went, huh? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. That is such a fucking typical romance fucking thing. There are terms that are used in contemporary romance that were used quite often in this book, and I think that's why I was like, hey, maybe we name it something different. The ending was very lackluster. It ended with action. It was okay. Burke and Hare tried to, Aniron tried to like burn down Burke and Hare's like murder apartment or whatever, but it I don't know, it was mid. The ending was very mid, because it felt like it came like with less of a bang and more of a whisper. It was just kind of like, it is what it is, it just happened. Small spoiler section. That wasn't that small. Why did I say it was small? Anyways, welcome back from the spoiler section. At the end of the day, I give this book a 3. If it was marketed as romance or dark academia even, I probably would have given it like a 4 or 5, but it wasn't, so I can't say that. It was a 3. It was readable. It was extreme. I just think it was good. It was well written. There was some romance tropes in there that I just went, huh, but it was well written. I think that I do like having romance even in like books that are not supposed to be in that genre, like Blood on Her Tongue or Mr. Magic. Those things had a little bit of romance in it, but it didn't eclipse the whole plot, which it did in this book. And like I said this in the spoiler section. I'm going to say it here, but with less words, so it's not spoiling anything. But I feel like if this was written in a dual point of view, we would have gotten more out of the book because I thought Aniron was really, really interesting. I just wanted to know more about him, and we really didn't get to know anything about him. So 3 out of 5. That is a decent score. Just just don't go into this book thinking you're gonna get a lot of like mystery or horror or body horror. There is some, but it's not all the time. Trigger warnings for this book, I would say, is like medical procedures, dismemberment, cadavers, homophobia, quite a bit, and gore. It's not really for the weak stomached reader. It does describe a lot of smells, and if you can't do that, I don't suggest this book for you. It's stinky. We get to imagine smells, and sometimes imagining smells makes you kind of queasy. But anyway, thanks for watching, YouTube. Have a good day. Goodbye, goodbye. Oh yeah, don't forget your coffin collars. Bye bye. Have a good day.